of my savings. So until I'm out of funds, I will be doing this. So I travel the world and interview non-believers for my podcast, which is called the Babelfish.
Which is what?
It's called Babelfish.
Babelfish.
Yes.
I listened it on Spotify.
You did, thank you. Thank you. And last winter, I traveled Africa for 3 months. So that was the first season where I interviewed people in Africa. And now, that was my first season, and the second season is a mix of European and African interviews. And now I travel Asia to make my third season. And I started in Russia and took the train to Beijing. And I've been in Japan, so many countries. Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Nepal, and now India.
Where would you say you got
what is your experience
best
in
response?
India?
Where have you got your best response of you about when you talked about your university?
Best response? What do you mean by best response? Because
where you found that people in those countries themselves are wanting to, strengthen or to start such a movement.
I think actually all over, but there's a difference on how far people have gotten, because I met a humanist in Japan, but there aren't really any organizations in Japan. And he was active a few years ago, and that's why I could get in contact with him through Humanist International, because someone knew him. So we went out for dinner because there wasn't any established organization, but and he said there would be a need in it for Japan. And the same in some of the other countries, the movements are very small, but in the Philippines it's also very strong. In Indonesia and Malaysia there aren't that many people, but they really want to organize and grow.
Have you been met the IHU?
It's through IHU that I found all the organizations I'm visiting.
Where's the IHU now? Is it in London?
In London.
It's not
Mr. Jain has that question to ask.
I asked you, what is your experience in India?
Oh, but I've just started here, so Delhi is my first list. First place, yes. So I don't know yet. I just came from Nepal, so I've just been here 2 days.
Those people who are from poorer communities, they would be less likely to want to become humanists.
Yes.
Right? That would be your experience. So when you went to Indonesia, or were they from the richer sections of the society? Or
yes, they're more educated. It's the same. It's the same. My experience from both Africa and what I've seen in Asia is that the more education you have, the more likely you are to be a humanist, because the poorer and lesser educated, it's easier to be indoctrinated by missionaries. And I've seen in Africa, there's a huge influx of missionaries from the US, the new Christian extremist groups like Pentecostals and newborn Christians, which are really fundamentalistic. And they have so much money, and they send huge amount of missionaries to Africa, but also to Asia, I found out, in different countries, converting poor people, saying that it will help them to believe in Christianity. I talked to Tam, who is also in Nepal, who is also part of the board of Humanist International. He says the same in Nepal. And they are targeting the low caste people.
What is the incentive they give?
The incentive is that if you believe enough, you will be rich and happy and have enough food. So you just have to pray. So if you don't pray enough, it's because you don't believe enough.
You will stay poor.
Yeah, and especially I talked to him in Nepal about targeting the lower caste, because that's the incentive is that there will be no difference between people. They will not be treated as equality. Exactly, is a huge incentive.
There would be monetary incentives also.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Prakash Narayan has a question. Prakash.
What is the income disparity?
Thank you, ma'am.
What is the income disparity level between rich and poor there?
In Denmark?
No, the
In Denmark.
In the society, are there some very rich people and very poor people, or it's more or less a
In Denmark, na? In Denmark, yes.
Denmark? Yes.
Denmark is one of the most equal countries in the world, so the difference between rich and poor is very little. And that's also some of the, I think,
No.
Not of the most equalitarian society.
Egalitarian inequality.
it's the Nordic
Inequality
countries.
level is not very high.
And is this
All the Nordic countries are
Yes,
all the Scandinavian or Nordic countries are
Yes, sir.
yeah.
least inequality.
And that's why we don't believe in God, I would say. Because, it's the welfare system has made it unnecessary to believe
Right.
in a God.
Mr. Prakash Narayan?
Yeah. I found your talk very interesting, and I'm so glad that you come all the way and to tell us what is happening in Denmark, and particularly to the humanist movement in Denmark. Humanism seems to mean various things to various people, to various organizations, various countries, various people within the organization, different people have different views. But I think there is one thing which probably finally the International Humanist Ethical Union, with which I have much to do, they have to evolve a certain what is meant by humanism, and they have got a minimum statement. And since you are a member of the IHU, I presume that your society has also read that, the minimum statement of humanism. Basically, people put it differently, but our founder, Kreiestine Kaern, he also put it in a way which is virtually the same as the famous German philosopher. He said that reason in the service of compassion. Both the things are necessary. Reason, that means that there's nothing I put it, love for fellow beings and an unmitigated and perennial freedom of thought, revisability. We don't, one basic thing which differentiates humanism as far as the IHU is concerned, as far as the IHU is concerned, as far as the Norwegian humanists are concerned, is that they don't believe in blind faith. We don't believe in dogmas, because dogmas finally kill compassion. That is the belief. So I presume the humanist movement in Denmark believes in all these things, the basic principles of humanism, which are these which are shared by the IHU, by the IHU and by the Norwegian, etc. And as you said, you have great admiration for the Norwegian movement, society. They are doing very well. Even the British Humanist Society is doing well. In some respects, you have done very well also, because what we lack is a humanist anthology for ceremonies, which the British Humanist Association has developed very well, and they are using it also. I am glad that you are also doing the same. Now, the picture in Denmark seems to be very mixed, and from what you say, that is the state constitution is totally religious. The humanist movement itself, of course, is humanist. They are not religious people. But the actual practice and the membership of the Humanist Union also, they are probably don't follow exactly what the IHU says, or the Norwegians, or what the general opinion of what the Humanist Movement stands for. There are all kinds of practices and whether it should be religion or not, there are various differences of opinion. In fact, humanism believes in everybody having its own opinion. It believes so much in the freedom of thought. So I learned a lot from what you said. As we said, that there are certain things in which we have not failed, which you have failed to achieve, like involving teachers, involving younger people, which you have managed to do. But if that is done at the cost of the basic principles, we won't do that. And as far as the separation of church and state is concerned, that has been the age-old practice since the French law of separation of law and church was passed about 100 years ago, and their centenary was celebrated in 2005. I struck on behalf of the IHU a slightly different note. I said that this complete separation is not a good thing, because there is so much atrocity being committed in the name of religion, by certain religions particularly, we won't mention. but and it is not that I achieve or the humanists cannot be indifferent to that. The humanist movement must intervene in such cases on behalf of the human rights position, even though if there may be the particular religion may be laying it down. So there has been a slight departure of the principle of separation is one thing, principle of impartiality is one thing, and the principle of intervention has been introduced in 2005 in Paris at our request. And that I think needs to be kept in mind that we are not indifferent to atrocities being committed in the name of religion, in certain religions, particularly in many religions. Hinduism is supposed to be very Catholic, but even there, the way Dalits have been treated, and we can't be indifferent there. In Islam, is full of atrocities against women. And to say that we'll be indifferent to that because of the principle of separation of church and state is not acceptable, not of the present humanist movement. And they have passed a resolution in 2005 to that effect. And that all that needs to be taken into account. And I would request that the Danish Humanist Society also should intervene, should believe in intervention on behalf of the state in case of this gross violation of human rights.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other questions and observations and so on? Now we were talking about the young and say what you find attractive about humanism. Of course, that is the starting point of all that. Please go ahead.
So my name is Shruti and I study in 11th standard and I live in Chandigarh. And I got inspired from my father to be a humanist.
What do you understand by humanist?
Like, if anyone says something to us like do this and do that, we shouldn't like just blindly follow that. We should apply our own mind, like whether it is right or wrong, and we should have logical thinking of rational.
Well done. Now you.
I am Krisietine and I study in 8th class. And I also live in Chandigarh.
Are you humanist or not?
Yes.
How?
Elaborate something. Tell something about your humanism. What do you mean by humanism?
Humanism follows humanity and away from that religious violence
And superstitions.
and superstitions. And we can't follow just what they say.
blindly.
But tell me, if you celebrate Diwali, what do you think of? You think of
We should not celebrate Diwali. Instead, we should just make fun or go on a trip on that day, or on not that day or around the month. And
What about lights? Festival of lights. Make it a festival of lights.
Without crackers.
yes, crackers are not the point because we enjoy crackers.
The pollution.
Boys will be boys.
There comes the George Carlin.
Huh?
That
Pollution avoid कर सकते हैं ना? You can use
we
crackers.
can avoid, but we will not contribute through this because the factories are polluting more, and human activities will not stop because of just the pollution.
But as far as going in favor of compassion is concerned,
Kindness.
yes, because it is also unkind to people the way solution is taken place.
Is
It's part
kindness
of compassion.
important? Is kindness important in your scheme of things? How does it fit? Being kind to people, being considerate. It's not only a question of whether you believe in God or not and follow Him.
After all,
How about kindness and compassion and how to look upon people who are less well off than you are, who are poorer, who are suffering? Do you have anything, do you owe anything to them?
like on festival, on the any festival, we can do like we can contribute to the poor people, go to the hospital, and instead of wasting money in these religious activities, we can help the needy people who actually need help from us. And of course, enjoy.
Of course you should
Yeah,
enjoy.
we can meet our relatives, friends, and go on trip shopping, and yeah, decorate our homes. That's a major thing on Diwali. And
So
enjoy.
you try to tell your relatives about humanism also? Or they don't listen?
I try to tell my cousins actually, but now
They're all from very religious families.
yeah.
And they are
Even my
May I ask a
grandparents are
question?
also very
They are
religious.
influenced
Yeah,
by
yeah.
their parents.
After she's finished. Prakash, just